Welcome, everyone. We know that in order to do our best for our students, we need to do well by the adults in our school communities. And that is why we are here. Professional development with CATDC is empowering for educators. And this has really been affirmed for me the last couple of weeks as I've joined our ongoing groups. There's been so much energy and connection and learning in the Zoom room, and it's been great to see many of you there. So we have a handful of shorter programs coming up, intensives as we call them in November, that serve to empower individuals and improve our school communities. So with me today is Dr. Keith Hinderlie. Welcome, Dr. Hinderlie.
Thanks for having me.
And it's great to see you again. And he will be facilitating our workshop, Set Up to Fail, Red Flags for DEI Professionals Working for Institutional Change, along with Dr. Liza Toulousan on November 18th. So welcome again, and thank you so much. I know you've had a really busy week bringing learning to so many different organizations and places. To get us started, tell us something about yourself and this work that you're doing.
Well, let's see. I think if you remember from last year, I'm a licensed psychologist and a DEI consultant. I work with schools and organizations to make them more inclusive places and do a lot of professional development, professional growth with workshops like this.
That's great. And you and Dr. Toulousan have both led programs for us separately. As you mentioned, last spring, you joined CATDC to offer understanding and handling microaggressions in the age of Black @. And Dr. Toulousan brought us identity conscious facilitation in August, both very well received. I know that you're a powerful team, or that's what I've heard anyway. And you've led this Red Flags workshop at the People of Color Conference last year, as well as other venues. Perhaps the title says it all, but what is the problem you're hoping to solve with this learning opportunity, or to begin to solve?
Yes, well, just to reaffirm what you said, Liza and I have a lot of fun with working together on this particular presentation, but also others. We have a really good rapport with one another, I'm told, and people like this workshop. In particular, folks who are either considering making a shift to taking a DEIJ leadership position or practitioner position in schools. And really what we saw a couple of years ago was an increase in the amount of jobs that were being posted and filled in our schools. Some of those jobs were structured in really positive ways that led to success. And some we have seen over the years are set up to fail with the system, structures, and people not in place or not functioning in a way to make sure that the person coming in is set up to be successful. So, you know, sometimes we're called in to clean up the mess, right? So practitioner is feeling overwhelmed with their responsibilities and feeling bad about not being as successful as they hoped. And we have to coach them or mentor them or whatever, or work with the school to make it a better situation, hopefully. Sometimes it doesn't work out. And so we want to help either current practitioners or people seeking a practitioner or leadership role to know what it looks like when the structures, supports, and people are in place for success, and when to identify when those structures, supports, and people are red flags and something maybe that you should avoid or address.
Such a great service that you're offering and supporting people to see those red flags more clearly. And I appreciate, how you frame that response in terms of how much we've heard in the last 2 years around bringing diversity, equity, and inclusion into the independent school environment more thoughtfully, more carefully, And bringing equity to the center has been a real priority in CATDC's own strategic plan and in our programming. And what I really appreciate in even just your workshop description is the way you differentiate these three terms, because I think often we put the language out there, but we don't really define what we mean. So I'm just going to read this. Some schools are focused on representation, diversity, while others are focused on a sense of belonging, inclusion. How are schools addressing the real work that comes along with disrupting power and access, equity? What are the red flags that DEI practitioners should look for in leadership, community, and practices in schools that say they are ready for equity? What do you do, as you were just describing, when there are conflicting messages about your role or the purpose of the position? So what I'm interested in, you have such a broad range of experience in schools. So where have you seen schools really engaging successfully with equity work, the real work that comes from disrupting power and access, as you put it?
Right. As you talked about in the description of the workshop, a lot of schools sort of stop at diversity and inclusion, sort of the demographics of the population, and maybe it is an environment where the people on the margins aren't complaining too much, right? That's not the work, but that seems to be what people want, right? And so you hear from schools, parents, trustees, administrators, isn't that enough? We've sort of reached our goal, where the real work of equity and inclusion is recognizing the needs and experiences of those on the margins, the least served, and that the work isn't finished until the least served have their needs and experiences accounted for, that they're affirmed, part of a community, and that the people, practices, and policies line up to address the needs of that population.
Right. And then when we think about the DEIJ practitioners who are brought into schools, that does give them a lot of responsibility. And I'm wondering, through this workshop, what are some of the key takeaways that you hope that folks who are already in this work or thinking about this work will bring with them after your time together?
Right. I think there are two buckets. One bucket is really to get a clear understanding of what diversity, inclusion, equity, and justice work look like, why we don't think that progress is really being made, the work is really being done until the equity and justice part is done. So that's one bucket. Mm-hmm. The other bucket is, what are the support structures and people that really sort of align with a good transition in and set up for success or not, right? And getting a clear understanding of what to look for and what to avoid if you're pursuing, I think there's some people that are pursuing a position like that. There's some people that might find themselves in a position and are wondering how effective they could be, and still would benefit from that second area.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And remember, everyone, that coming together in community like this also puts you in connection to other practitioners who are grappling with the same questions. Right. You'll leave with some new contacts, people to follow up with as well.
Yes, yes. Mm-hmm. We've heard just how important this workshop is for people that fall into that sort of category of either looking or assessing where they're at or whatever, and seeing that other people are dealing with the same types of themes.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today and leading this workshop with Dr. Toulousan early in November, actually mid-November, which will be here before we know it, as we well know. And I wanted to just remind people that we also have some ongoing groups starting up. Finance and Sustainability in Independent Schools and Leadership Fellows still have space. We have a community conversation coming up, Being a Leader in a Year in another year like no other, as well as some other intensives, one on culturally competent hiring with Chris Cullinan and guest speaker Cal Balavan, building inclusive classrooms through differentiated instruction in person in Los Angeles with our own Erin Hoffman, and then what it is critical to know now, navigating and mitigating the effects of organizational crisis with Kate Shepard and Marcella Hunter. So we have a lot on the docket. And again, Dr. Hinderlie, thank you for joining us when you have so much going on.
Thanks again for having me. Excited about the workshop.
Hope to see you all there. Take good care.